around. On to the monthly activity and financial report.
Madam Chair, directors of the board, thank you for your time today. I'm excited to report the first month of the fiscal year financials to the board. Obviously, as December is our first month of the fiscal year as we run through November 30th. Couple just highlights, and I'll keep these fairly light because we do have an update today from a couple operations people. Julie Rising, our Assistant Executive Director, will be providing an operations update, and then our Safety Security Manager, Brandon Doty. So I've kept my operational updates fairly light just because those are going to be probably duplicated at some point. But there's more highlights than just a few photos for December, and I'll really let Julie highlight those. But again, we picked up some additional business, and I'll get into that as I get into my events report or section of the report here. As we went into budget season, we budgeted for 27 events in December. We had 25 on the books. Historically, we've picked up 2 between budget season and the time that the month happened. We actually picked up 5 events. So that was a big one, 4 of those being holiday parties and 2 of those being substantial holiday parties. So really good month overall. Ended with 32 total events in the month of December, with 26 of those being banquets, a consumer and public show, and festival of trees. Or sorry, no, that's actually we have a trade show with all of with the Christmas items. What is that trade show? That's
Wintry Market.
Wintry Market, thank you. So the Wintry Market is that consumer public trade show, one of the conventions being Festival of Trees, and then a few different meetings as well. 2 conventions held in December, over $230,000 in revenue for 640 room nights. Total attendance is going to look a little skewed as we get into these. I've got a couple new colors on there, as you're going to note. I kept orange as the color for 2025 because it stands out the best on these slides. So I've moved that forward before it was 2024. What I've done is I've dropped 2022 off. Again, that was coming out of COVID, and it was a fairly light year, at least the start of the year. And as we look at these, the big difference here, as you're going to see, is that significant uptick due to Festival of Trees ending in December. So that attendance that normally would have been down there at the bottom in November, I've also dropped in forecasted attendance in this as the purple line. So we can kind of see as again, we can't control the attendance, but we try our best to try to estimate what it's going to be, and that helps us with economic impact and all kinds of things as far as planning for the year.
So it looks like it was still down from last year as far as Festival of Trees attendance?
Total Festival of Trees attendance, yes. And that could be a combination of Festival of Trees along with 1 or 2 very large holiday parties added in that we could have had last year, but for the most part, it was mostly due to festival. Guest satisfaction, I just kind of put these stacked on top of each other because we're finishing off last year, as well as capturing some additional data on the beginning of this year. So I just wanted to make sure as we continue to see surveys come in from last year, this is where we stand and finished 2024. The response rate was 39%. So 39% of our total events that we sent the survey to responded, and we came in with a 4.92 weighted average, and that's on the overall experience at Boise Center. Again, we metric a lot of the different service departments this way as well, and we have different metrics that Julie will get into further as she gets into her report. For 2025, we're batting 1,000, which is awesome to see. So out of 8 events that have responded so far, again, these trickle in sometimes a month to 2 months after, but we're seeing a perfect 5 score out of the 8 events that we've gotten responses from already so far in this fiscal year. So we're off to a great start. Market strategy. Again, just a couple different conferences that we wanted to highlight. Momentous Illuminate, it was confirmed for September 2025. That's a big conference, not only just from an economic impact room night, it's a great piece of business, but it is the software that we use as our event management software. It's also what we use currently for our full financials. So having these people in-house is going to allow, we negotiated some free registrations to the event for our staff to be able to attend. So again, there's going to be a benefit to having them in-house. A lot of our counterparts from all over the nation will be coming here as well because they use this software as well. So great opportunity from that side, and then a couple other new pieces of business that Allie and her team have booked there with the Northwest Energy Efficiency Alliance and Northwest Region of American Chemical Society. All of those really good pieces of business, and some of them further out than others, some of them in 26. Some of them, just that most recent one was for actually 25, so it was in this fiscal year, was not in the budget when we actually were working on the budget. This was a new piece of business that came through. Again, this is just a nice little snapshot kind of showing you as we look ahead, but this is something that I want to make sure as I pointed out to the board last month, is something that we're seeing a little leveling off or cooling off. Some of that's due to the hotel challenges we have of getting the number of hotel blocks. But we are seeing that purple year-to-date prior starting to outpace that year-to-date in the orange that's there on several of these categories. So as you work from left to right, you've got the future booked economic impact. Within the current month, it was $1 million. But again, as we're pacing compared to the prior year in that same year-to-date, looking at this exact same month, we were sitting at 1.7. So again, those are numbers that are pacing behind slightly, and the same thing with future booked revenue. And then as you get into future booked nights, it's the same story all the way across. So this is the first time that I've seen that flip happen where the orange has historically been up above that purple. Operational updates, as I spoke about, I kept these just more of a stay tuned for Julie's report because she gets into this and mostly into depth, as well as food and beverage because those are both departments that that Julie oversees and report through her. As I get into the financials, Boise Center revenues. December's revenues were a record December, but again, as I pointed out last month, that November, a little bit lower due to the Festival of Trees just shifting slightly on when the event ended, and the event end date is how we report. So a lot of those revenues, or all those revenues, moved over into December from Festival of Trees, along with, like I said, we had 4 new banquets that showed up, 2 of them being fairly large, 2 of them being close to 6-figure events. That really pushed us up. So we were just shy of $1 million forecasted in revenue. Again, coming out the gate at 1.3 is something that I'm still a little shocked on. Also, Festival came in at one of its highest it's ever been on revenue as well. So overall, a good start to the year. What I'm going to drop in going forward into this is drop out 22, because I meant to do that on this slide. I'm just noticing that I didn't capture it. This 22 will drop out, and that purple line will become the budget. So you can kind of see how we're pacing from forecast to budget. But we were about $1 million, just shy of $1 million for the budget for December. Gross profit and gross margin, again, having a $300,000 over budget month really helped drive this number up, but it's sitting at 30%. The goal is at 20%. We bumped that up a little bit from last year. So again, continuing to see that and a really good start. I anticipate that's going to correct a little bit come January because we started out pretty slow in January. We've got obviously events going on right now, but the second half of the month is much busier than the first, and it was one of the slowest beginnings of January I've seen since pre-COVID at this point in time. Boise Center economic impact, again, some of these numbers just looking a little skewed in the sense that orange one climbing way up from prior year December is mostly due to that same exact challenge, but also we had 2 conventions in December, so economic impact came in at $8.1 million for December. Our goal is at 50.8, but jumping out the gate, that's a really good start, but we will see that November won't be as strong as it was without Festival in that. So, a few different district updates, and I've got some documents here in front of us, but I'll get into that here in just a second. Feasibility study RFP is currently posted and open, so that is the study that will be looking at data to potential projects or expansion opportunities for the district to look at. We've kind of taken a 3-headed approach to that, along with me and Pine Street Group and Chase leading that kind of charge. This RFP is looking for feasibility studies on a potential expansion of the current convention center, a potential sister facility, or a multi-purpose sports facility option. And then also in there, in the details, we've kind of asked for a combination of that sister facility and a multi-purpose sports where it could be a possible events and sports at the same time. I had the virtual pre-bid meeting yesterday where we had probably 5 to 6 people on the call asking questions. Wasn't many of the biggest ones that do this as far as the biggest names in the industry, CSLs, those type of groups that do these, but it was more a couple different local presence and a few people I had not heard of before that hopped on the call and asked some questions. So overall, that pre-bid meeting went well, and we're looking forward to getting that process started. That ends on January 28th or 29th is when that closes. After that, we will negotiate with myself and Chase will evaluate along with Pine Street Group the different proposals that we have. We have a scoring and a kind of a grading system that we will use based on experience and all kinds of things that are drawn up inside that RFP. And then our goal would be is to negotiate a contract, come up to negotiations of contract terms with whoever it is that we think is the best choice out of that, and then present that on February's board meeting to the board with a recommendation to go into a contract or potentially not, depending on what we get out of that. I would hope that we have a recommendation for a contract would be my hope out of that process.
So are you looking for one entity to do all the studies, or did you give the option to break up and do a financial feasibility and then the rest of the study
No,
with
we're
somebody
really
else?
just looking for one entity under this RFP and this process to do that. I guess they could get creative and respond to the RFP in a piecemeal approach, but I don't anticipate that, so.
And if we don't get anything back that you feel is, like if CSL doesn't respond and you feel like they're,
If we don't feel that the project or the responses that we got will give us the data or the information that we need, we would give that recommendation to the board to let them know this isn't quite what we thought it was going to be. I don't anticipate that happening because I've heard from several people on the call that it was a very well-written RFP. So we're getting, and again, not seeing some of the big names hop on the call tells me that they didn't have questions, which means the details were pretty clear. District board election update. So we're kind of in a holding pattern, and I let the board chair know about this earlier last week as well. But basically, they're waiting for revised candidate filing forms. I've been in communication with Ali O'Brien, who's the election supervisor at the Ada County Elections Office. And basically, by the end of this month, they should have those candidate filing forms sent over to us. And as soon as the forms are published, they're going to let me know, and then I will let our candidates know, which would be Jim and Jody that are coming up for election at this point in time. I have no other individuals that have reached out to me with interest in running for those seats. The way that I have confirmed it works through the Ada County Elections Office is if there was one person that wanted to run for the board, all three names will go on the ballot, and then the top two vote getters would get the seats, is how that would work. Any questions on that process there? Candidate filing, we're also supposed to be offering candidate district filing class on March 6th that I'm going to attend, so some information that I'll just be passing on as I learn more. District, the bid for the Aquatic Center parking lot being posted next. I haven't gotten around to that one yet because we've had we've had an RFQ and an RFP along with some holidays and some other stuff happening in between. Very close to getting that information over to legal to then get that out. I'm kind of glad that we don't have all of these being posted. One of them would have been simultaneously with the RFQ for construction management services that we're going to be talking about today, and those are similar entities that respond to those. So getting this up as early as next week is the plan at this point in time for the parking lot. With the proposal, same situation there, would be work through the negotiations of that process and bring something to the board with the hopes in February's meeting to go into an agreement if the board chooses to. They can choose, you guys could choose not to do the parking lot too based on costs, challenges, what I'm able to present to the board under that. Just a note here for the district and for the board that we're increasing our 2026 capital budget for costs related to Boise Center West carpet and paint. As we did carpet up in the east side just recently in 24, at the end of 24, we've been doing carpet up on the concourse and in 200 for December of 25, so it depends on which fiscal year and how you look at it. That project is coming in a little higher than what we anticipated, and it's a lot of the trades that are coming in currently, and I anticipate a lot of it's just due to the amount of demand and work that Micron and projects like that have in the current market. So we are just bumping up the budgets for 2026, looking at, because this is time for the west carpet and paint, which as you'll start seeing, this color theme will carry over to the west building, and that's planned to start in December of 25, which is fiscal year 26, and we're just going to increase that. Now, that'll come through in the budget process this summer as I go through, and I'll make notes about that. Just something to pay attention to because continues to be, that is the subsidy that we need to continue to keep this building looking nice. And so I just want the board to keep aware that we are seeing the capital needs go up a little bit. It's a cost perspective. View Glass update. Currently, we're also in a holding pattern as the clerk of the court has filed a default against View Glass at this point in time, and we're waiting to hear back. Simultaneously, Mike and his team, or Jim and his team over at Hawley, are working to make sure that there is a name change that View Glass is, or a possible another entity name that they operate under, and we're going to capture that inside of the lawsuit as well, just to make sure they don't come back and say, well, because you guys, that's why they didn't respond to the first one, was because it wasn't named in the other complaint. At this point in time, though, that's an interesting, at least from the legal perspective, that they haven't responded, but they have given us no response. They're still in business as far as we can tell, but they are keeping their head in the sand, which in some ways that could help if there is a default judgment against View and on benefit of the district. That would cover a lot of our costs and our time spent in this process. Questions about the View Glass update? Okay. And then we'll get into this as the board action item that's coming up right after this is the RFQ for construction management selection process, and board approval is here. We did post out that RFQ, and that's a little different than an RFP where we're just looking for qualifications for a construction manager. What this agreement would allow us to do is enter into a 5-year agreement for construction management services, then to partner with as we continue to do these year-by-year renovations, and we phase them out intentionally so we don't have to take event space offline or close down for a long period of time, and having them kind of go on our behalf and cover some of the procurement stuff from other services providers such as carpet, paint, and all of those as we go forward. The procurement law allows us to enter into a 5-year agreement like this. What I want to make clear to the board is it doesn't commit dollars or anything on your end outside of what you guys agree to do via the capital budget. So that's where we use the money for a construction management service like this, would be through the projects that get approved through the capital plan. Questions on that? Okay, we'll get into that here shortly after my presentation's done and ask for board approval to move forward with the agreement as we have. And I know Julie can speak to some of that process because she led that RFQ process and did a great job at it. So Jody has asked, and so I'm going to pull out in front of you. Guys have organizations and entities associated with Greater Boise Auditorium District. I'm going to call this the Book of Jody for now. It's like the Bible for board members on the district is what I'm calling it at this point in time. What this is again, it took a stab at trying to capture as many of the entities that we are affiliated with, do business with, have associations with in one form or another. And again, this felt like 7 degrees to Kevin Bacon, where the longer I kept getting into the list, the more and more there was associations and other things that might have had a 3rd degree, 4th degree tie-in. So I tried to keep it somewhat targeted and limited. If there are other organizations that you've heard us speak about, talk about, that aren't on this list, please let me know what they are. Mary Michael helped with this process, did a great job as that, and then I had several other team members kind of helping, and then finally meeting with our board chair and Mike to kind of round out the document. The way that it is designed, though, is the first few pages are going to be just those organization entities associated with the center of the district. Then you're going to get into, on page 5, the professional service providers of the district. And then you're going to get into the primary software systems. And the last page is just kind of a highlight of other auditorium districts in Idaho, some industry-related terms, acronyms, or associations that we work with. But I tried to give some detailed and some text associated to many of the different acronyms you hear or the associations that we work with or belong to. If you have any questions, I think this is going to be a living document going forward that I would recommend we basically update annually, but also as new board members come on, I anticipate this would be a document that would be helpful to give each board member a deeper understanding of the relationships we have and who we work with. Any comments?
Madam Chair, Cody, appreciate you doing this. Is Tim on?
He's, yeah, on Zoom. Yeah.
Tim, where's your group in this deal?
Trailhead's not on the list.
Not
I
currently.
looked up their website. I didn't know this, TM, that you're a national company, so I wasn't sure to include them or not. But as a board member being part of it, I'd be happy to add them to the list. But I didn't have Trailhead on there.
I was just curious. Is it at all practical? I'm imagining a bubble chart or circles that,
A Venn diagram of overlapped areas. Okay, I think I could give you a graphic that would kind of give us some clearer understanding of where our overlaps exist at. In one of those, and again, this is in there, it's actually listed as something that I'm working on, and as I've spoke about it, is that tri-agency group meeting. So on page, it would be page 4, at the very bottom, is a multi-agency roundtable, and that is the group that I'm looking at starting. And that's going to be an opportunity, and I just point this out to the board because it's been something that I've talked about in prior board meetings and have been working on forming. But I didn't want to limit it to just a tri-agency group. In the past, it was just tri-agency, where it was the city of Boise, the auditorium district, and CCDC getting together. I think that there's an opportunity where there's multi-agencies, where you might have more than just those agencies. It could be the county commissioners or the Ada County component of that, including them in meetings and looking for opportunities where we share, to Jody's point, in creating that kind of, hey, these are all the things that overlap all these organizations, and is there an opportunity, whether it's signage, whether it's just looking at future projects. I think there's a lot of opportunity there for bringing these different agencies that share in some of their goals and their missions whether it's economic impact or what it is we do from the community side, and making those meetings a little bit more flexible and allowing for more opportunity. So, again, it's not going to be a decision-making group, and I tried really hard to kind of highlight that about what the intent of that group is. It's more of a strategic planning type of a group that would take back information to their boards or their executives, what the plan would be for decision makers to then decide what to do with that information.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, Cody, I was just wondering, I didn't see anything, one of our biggest stakeholders are the hotels, and I know there's a group that you attend that is a loose connection of the, or maybe it's not a loose connection, but it's a group of the hoteliers that,
We currently have a call with the Visit Boise that's for the kind of the sales managers and all the people that are on the sales side from the hotels. It's not really an organization or a group formed there. SCAL would be the organization we belong to that's listed on here. That does kind of, it's the association for networking for all the hoteliers. But hotels was something that I remember I spoke to several people, the board chair about, and also several of our team about, including hotels. How far I go, I mean, I have the full list of all the district reporting hotels, so I could go that far in properties and include that as another page, and did consider doing that, but didn't know where to start because I didn't want to leave somebody off. If we're going to have some hotels, we got to probably have all the hotels that are in.
And Jim, there used to be an organization, probably what you're thinking of, it was the Idaho Restaurant and Housing, or what was it?
Lodging
Lodging Association, and they are no longer.
okay.
And so that has gone away, and I think Skull is probably taking the place of that. They're a tourism organization locally. Well, they're an international tourism organization as a local chapter.
Yeah, there was an IRLA, which was Idaho Restaurant and Lodging Association, that had hotels and restaurants as part of it. We belong to that. A lot of them have merged into SCAL at this point in time. So, yeah.
Madam Chair, a lot of organizations that have a number of these are our customers, right? Have like a customer council or something like that.
Customer advisory boards.
Are there so many of these hotel and lodging operations that they need something like that, or do they speak for is there a handful of big ones that speak for everybody?
I think that's probably more of how it goes, but I would say, and again, I'm not a hotelier, so I don't want to speak for them. It seems like that would be an association that would be very valuable. Now, I'm guessing they have it at a national level, but probably not as much a local chapter level. I'm sure there are hotel associations, because I'm sure our sales team has tried to sell them on bringing a conference to Boise or bringing something here, because I know of a few of the ones that sit on the national side, but as far as presence here locally, I'm not as familiar with. That one, the restaurant lodging, was the closest one I could think of.
Madam Chair, members of the board, good afternoon. Director Olson, there was probably 10 years ago a Treasure Valley Lodging Association that was very active. When Pat was the executive director, I want to say they phased out slowly over time. It used to be very active, and you'd see 20 or 25 general managers of hotels attend, and slowly over time it just kind of dissipated and membership dwindled. And then SCAL is active, but the Boise Metro Chamber also has a travel advisory committee, and their rental car companies, attractions, Cody is a board member, and there are hoteliers. But then Visit Boise also has some of their board members, and they have partner level sponsorships where hotels can pledge sponsorship dollars to Visit Boise as a revenue source, and they are at a higher level and they get access to certain reports. So although Treasure Valley Lodging Association is no longer, there's other products and ways that those hoteliers are being communicated with and supported.
And then I think internally you also have is it a quarterly meeting with
That was that
The industry?
meeting that I talked about with the DOSs from different properties.
Yeah.
Hotels that tend to participate in the room blocks. And try to do what we can from a strategy standpoint to get out in front of what we've talked about, prime leads. I know Visit Boise's given that report to the board, looking at those leads that maybe were overlooked. We're trying to get a different color at the top and highlight those. Those meetings have been extremely well received from everybody on the call. And so that is the plan, to continue those quarterly. Again, more to come on that document, because I think it is something that can continue to be added to. So I like the idea of adding hotels. It would be a bit of a chasing my tail component, because I know so many hotels come online. That would be the one challenge, but I do have the list through what I get from the Idaho State Tax Commission from all the reporting hotels, and that would be where I'd start for that stakeholder list. This is really, again, just focusing more on district stuff here on this stuff, just to give you guys what I've been planning on working on from a quarter-by-quarter basis. I've kind of got an annual plan overview, feasibility study, we've talked about that, the Boise Center refresh projects, hard bid for the aquatics. I'm going to be having in the next month or two an approval for the crisis communications plan coming before the board. That's a very robust document that Mary Michael and Brandon Doty, who will be reporting today, have worked on. Candidate filing period for elections coming up, and we have started our audit for Q1. So that's all in process. Q2, document retention policy is something I'm working with Mike on. I'd like to see us have one of those created, and to a point where it at least allows us as administrators to know what we can maybe keep or what we can throw away and how long we need to keep certain documents. Audit was finalized in Q2, and then began the multi-agency roundtable meetings as I spoke about. The election will be held. I'll get into Q3 and Q4 as we get closer to those, but just kind of showing you guys an overview as we get forward with the board and what my plan is, getting out in front of this a little bit earlier than last year. This has not changed since last month, but I do have some information that I can update because I put in for the STR report for this month, and I'm sure I'll get it any minute or day at this point in time because it usually comes out about this time, but with the board meeting being a little earlier, sometimes I have the data, sometimes I don't. So nothing changed from here from a lodging room revenue standpoint. There was the question that I had noted about the occupancies and the demand from October, and what I've identified is, and I'm still identifying where it's coming from, but that month had the largest non-taxable sales. So a couple things that can drive that is federal groups staying in hotels can be non-taxable. So then the district, so while occupancies and ADRs can be up there, we're not collecting that 5% tax off of that, or the state commission is not collecting that tax on our behalf. What can drive that, if from what I've identified, is long-term stays as well in hotels. So after you stay a certain period of time, that could be happening with several hotels with Micron's projects happening. So I'll pay closer attention to this as I go forward, but ultimately there was nothing indicating other than the non-taxable sales were higher than prior months on both ends. Again, these stayed static from last month, so again, finishing off the year very similar to how we saw November end last year. So as I get December's numbers, it'll be interesting to see how we're starting out, and I'll start layering those over the top of this slide as well. And then same thing, I'm curious to see where those are my forecast numbers there, and I will drop dots in where they finish off when I get the December report, because that will be the final year end. That I'll stay in for questions.
Any questions? Thanks, Cody.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the board. Financial overview. Revenues for Boise Center was 1.3. I apologize, I'm still hoarse, so you're just gonna have to bear with me. Expenses came in at 1.9, resulting in a $1 million transfer. This graph here is not correct. We've been having some issues with regards to the financial reports that are being transferred into Momentous from our Paylocity, some of our other software. And then what we're finding is the Crystal reports that are within Momentous are actually breaking down because of some of the updates that are done to the software but not done to the reporting. So that's not necessarily transfers there. It is actually the budget variance that you'll see. So there wasn't $720,000 that was, I'll get into transfers here in just a minute. So you can see the district had $849,000 in income with $26,000 in expenses. Sorry, I've got 3 sheets going here. Hotel tax collections for December came in at $796,000. It was about $89,000 more than what we had budgeted for. This is the transfer sheet. There was $1 million that was transferred from the Greater Boise Auditorium District into Boise Center. And this is what graph, we're gonna redo this, but this is what it was covering. You had about $178,000 in capital projects. And as Cody alluded to, that was the concourse and the 200 refresh. You had $680,000 in operating expenses. And then a lease payment, which is pretty static, that comes out of $140,000. I did not include the Clearwater investment because we have Brandon and Rhett here from Clearwater that are going to be going over the same exact information that we would have included. This is the district cash position currently at the $30,411,000. We keep our restricted funds, again, $250,000, and the stabilization fund, that was set at $6 million. Leaves us with cash available for projects of $24 million. One of the things that I do want to bring to the board's attention is we're currently sitting on $4.5 million of cash in our bank account. Those were revenues that were recognized probably the last quarter of last year, strictly because the center did so well. Those transfers were much smaller than what they normally are on a monthly basis. So what I'd like to do is meet with the guys, the team, and go over, evaluate, and come back to the board with a comprehensive proposal on what we should do with those investments, and if there's a way to accelerate that throughout the year instead of it just being one lump sum at the end. So we're going to take a look and come up with a plan and come back, and I'd like to hear any feedback, whether it's from the finance department or any of the board members that have some ideas with regards to how they'd like to move forward with that. Audit is underway. Director meeting. The audit is underway. They started it January 6th. I had most of the documentation that they had requested uploaded. I did go on vacation. I know that's a big no-no, but I am coming up on my year. And so I made sure that most of what they had inquired about was uploaded. We did have some straggling capital documentation that needed to be uploaded. I'll get that done this week. I also allowed for my team to take some time off amongst the holidays. So between the three of us, there were 3 weeks where one of us was out. So, and then sick. So we are catching up, but the finance team is it's small but mighty. And like I said, we are struggling with regards to some of these reports that are coming out. But we do have a plan in place. So really excited about that. With that, any questions, concerns?
Jody, have you started your,
Yeah, thank you. I met with the auditors just before coming here, and we've had staffing issues. And last year, we had a couple of big holes, and it's hard to hire accountants in Boise for some reason. But it's well documented. And so Stephanie now has filled 2 positions.
Yes.
Significant controller type, or 3.
2 really for the team. I did promote Maria, who you guys probably have remembered. She was the accounts payable specialist. I did promote her to senior accountant position.
She was gone for a while.
She has a great deal of experience with auditing and accounting. No, she's been with the organization for 3 years now.
Who am I thinking of?
Maybe Nikki, but
Yeah.
Nikki was our prior senior accountant. Remote work was her challenge on that one.
Right, and she's the same way. That's not, you know.
We all met with Nikki not too long ago, but yeah, she's not working at Boise
But
Center.
I encourage Ide Bailey. Ide Bailey is unique in national firms in that they do have staff, bookkeeping kind of people, you know, to the extent we might need it. And I encourage them to offer it, and I encourage Stephanie and Cody to take it if they need it, just to keep things on.
Appreciate that support. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll just speak from the executive director's perspective. I can tell you, while there is things breaking down, we do not take things for granted, meaning we're not assuming anything. So we're combing through the data. That's getting information out to you guys a little bit longer sometimes. But I'm big on making sure that we're double checking and crossing our T's and dotting our I's. There's some breakdown inside those crystal reports that definitely we know. So for example, some of the wages weren't carrying through when we pulled the report. We know our employees got paid in those areas. I can prove that through our other systems, but it's the where that's coming through when we're pulling those reports. So it's taking a lot of time to go through line by line on GL by GL to make sure that everything is pulling through correctly.
So I think, you know, to the extent we can get controller, bookkeeper kinds of staff in addition to Cody and Stephanie is a plus.
Great.
Yeah, I would just recognize the small but mighty team. They have literally burnt the candle at both ends, and then that meant coming in on Saturdays or Sundays, and that was throughout the holidays. So just want to recognize their
Oh,
efforts.
thank you.
And so this issue with reporting, is that just a software thing that you guys are going to working to
There's
fix?
probably a recommendation coming sooner than later, because what we use is Momentous for our full financials. That's actually on the list of softwares here. That's an event management software system. It is not, I mean, it can do financials, but it is not, everybody that I know within the industry that's used it has run into a similar issue, a challenge there. I think Anne Marie, under prior leadership, under the prior director of finance, she was okay with getting a lot of data out of it and then manually doing some things. That just creates more room for error, and that I'm not as comfortable with. So we are looking at other options for financial system, because there is a value in absolutely having the financials in our Momentous system. I can get that same data exported with an API from one system and dumped into that system versus trying to make a system that truly was created for events and event planning work for financials. So. But again,
I was
appreciate
trying
the
to move
support
away.
of the board in the comments there, Jody, because that does mean a lot that you have the support of the board. But I'm making sure that the team understands that as well.
Okay, any other questions? Nope. All right, with that, I'd entertain a motion to approve the monthly activity and financial report.
So move.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thanks, TM.
There's TM.
Okay. On to item D, RFQ, construction management. Cody?
Yeah, this is, and again, I'll have Julie, if you want to step up to the table, because you're going to be reporting here anyway before long. She can speak a little bit to this, but this process was something that is a little different than what we've done in the past. Historically, we've gone out to RFP and done this on an annual basis. Per the procurement law, it allows you to go to a 5-year agreement for these types of services. That was our recommendation. Also working with legal, it seemed to make sense that we went this process. But again, it doesn't commit the board to 5 years worth of projects or anything from a financial side. But what we did is we went through that process. The process itself, similar to the RFP that we have out for the feasibility study, has a scoring kind of matrix of how you're going to score your respondents. The team, meaning Nick Shoba, our Director of Operations, and Julie Rising, as the Assistant Executive Director, have went through that process and have come up with a recommendation to move forward with a contract with Petra Construction, is who actually rose to the top at that point in time. So I'd be seeking for board approval to enter into an agreement on a 5-year term for construction management services for future projects like the East's renovation, where we do carpet, paint, those type of constructions. This would not be used for the parking lot. This would not be used for those type of other construction projects, because it's a little different in that way.
So just general maintenance and upkeep.
Correct.
Yeah, I mean, I think you said it all really. I mean, this will really help our team. When we did East, we had to do RFPs each time and continue to find a CM. And so this will allow us to have a CM that helps us go out to bid for us. So they'll still do an RFP. We'll actually need to have one of us will be on the RFP with them each time we go through, the subs that we'll be using for it. So they'll just really help. We're not an expert in this. We don't do this all the time. So taking these huge, this is over $1 million project to be able to do the carpet, walls in West and refresh. So it'll be really important to have them and that consistency. So when we start this again, starting with East in 7 years or 10 years, we'll do the East, then we'll do 200s, the West, and then maybe 110s and 120s. So really just having that same CM could help us kind of take through the design. And so I think it would really just help the efficiency of the project.
How many responses did you get?
We got 3 bids and went through an internal selection based off the RFQ. I guess I'd say barriers, ESI, Express, and then Petra.
And you had an internal scoring system, and you felt that Petra had the highest score.
Yeah, and we've actually worked with all 3 of them. They all 3 qualifying bids. We just felt overall, based on our selection, which went through like experience, similar projects, qualification of the project team, approach to managing the project, references, how much could they bond was one of them, and then compliance with the submission requirements. So we just felt like overall, Petra just nudged over the top of it. But they all 3 were great CMs that submitted. So it was great to see that.
Any communication or questions that you guys have about it? No? Okay, so I'd entertain a motion to approve.
Move to approve.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right, any opposed? All right, Petra it is.
Thank you.
All right, on to other business. I'm not sure who's going to be reporting today. Okay, perfect. Legislative updates, you're in the thick of it, huh?
Oh, well, we're in day 12, and it's early,
That's it?
yeah, and it feels like there's not much going on, although Kylie and I looked at the number of bills, the number of bills is about the same. We have new leadership on both sides, and it's like the first quarter of a championship football game. Both sides are kind of pushing and shoving to see who's going to get the upper hand, and I think that's one of the reasons none of the meaningful stuff has come up. The three meaningful items, I think, are the big budget items. One is to replenish the wildfire fund. The fires last summer got everybody's attention, so there's a big number, about $100 million total that's earmarked to go into that. There's about another $150 million. The governor's sticking with his commitment to education, and for the first time, he's dedicated $50 million to school choice, which is, he's been an absolute no on school choice, but this year he included it in his State of the State. And then the third big item is $100 million in tax cuts, which includes an income tax cut, an adjustment to the grocery tax credit, and some property tax relief. But we haven't seen the light of day on any of those yet after 12 days. And I think the large reason for that is the legislators are fighting over a pay raise for themselves. They came up with a 20+% pay raise, and Senator Zito introduced a bill or a resolution to reject it. And they have till next Friday to get this resolved, and the House thinks they're going to override it. And it's got the House divided, and so we got a lot of squabbling going on behind the scenes right now. And as a result, nothing major's moved. We'll see a lot of other stuff. I think we'll see a bill to repeal Medicaid expansion. We'll see how that goes. There's other issues. I think Kylie might have a list of other key stuff, and go for it.
Well, I was just going to go over some of the other priorities the governor laid out in his State of the State. Like John said, continued investments in education, infrastructure. He wants $50 million for large infrastructure projects, $30 million ongoing for water projects to increase water capacity and quality across the state, $37 million in additional funding for the State Public Defender's Office. A couple years ago, they transitioned that program from a county-run program to a state-run program. And this is the first year that's been in effect, and it's been a big issue because they have staffing shortages across the state in the public defender's offices. Other than that, his Idaho Launch program, where the state sends scholarships to high school graduates who are pursuing in-demand careers, has been a big success. And as a result of that, colleges and universities and community colleges and workforce trainers across the state don't have enough capacity to keep up with demand. So the governor hopes to see some more money put into those programs so that they can increase capacity to meet the demand. But the launch program could be at risk depending on how the school choice program goes. You know, there's always fights over money, where the money's going to end up. So other than that, yeah, like John said, a couple other big issues. We're expecting to see a proposal to repeal Medicaid expansion, which we've seen in the past and it hasn't gotten over the finish line, but you never know. We have a lot of new legislators. Also some bills on illegal immigration enforcement, and then anti-DEI legislation, which we've seen the past couple sessions. So with that,
But we haven't seen anything related to urban renewal
yeah.
or anything that would affect your contracts yet. But we got another month and 2.5 months to go, so we'll see what happens.
And that's the stuff that I'd be curious is if we're going to have any more of that kind of boycott China language in our contracts or any of that kind of stuff that would impact our ability to
Yeah.
get contracts signed.
So far, so good.
Yeah.
Any questions?
Madam Chair, John Kiley, I want to talk about the fire funds. I see in articles about appointing our friend Mike Bourne to be the head of the Forest Service. They talk about the state handling its own forestry issues, including fire. Now, the state can't possibly have enough money to fight a fire without federal help, can they?
That's a great question. I don't know the answer to it. I know that on the big fires, you have a combination of state land and federal land, and sometimes there's a little disagreement of how the fires should be fought, how to deploy air assets, and I don't know what Mike Warren's thoughts on that are, but I know it got everybody's attention last summer when we had so much of Idaho burning. Went through 60 million in the reserve fund, and they want to have another 40 million ongoing dedicated to fighting wildfires.
So that's 100 million of state money
Yeah,
this year.
yep.
Thank you.
And Jody, just from my perspective, I don't think, $100 million would last very far into the fire season, honestly, if it was just the state battling that. But I have another question, Madam Chair. Not that it relates to the district so much, but the ITD property, we discussed it last time you guys were here. And is that going away? Because there was talk at some point that that development might include a hotel.
State Street property,
Yeah,
it's on hold
On
for
hold.
2 years. The numbers that came back, I think $69 million to replace the building. A lot of people are surprised that it was so much. And so there's no pressing need to do anything right now. So the speaker's opinion is they could wait 2 years and see where this ends up. I know tomorrow the House and Senate Transportation Committees are going to go out and tour the facility and look at it and see if they can come to grips with what the numbers say and what they themselves think is the real number. Let me back up 1 minute to fires. There's another effort in the Department of Insurance to create a backstop fund because they're afraid insurance companies are going to start, or they've already started, but continue to reject homeowners' requests for fire insurance, especially in some of the more rural areas, if you can call Sun Valley, Coeur d'Alene, and McCall rural, high dollar houses and stuff like that. In fact, even in this valley, there's some people that have been turned down for fire insurance. So, and after what happened in the insurance industry is going to be interesting.
yeah.
Have we been, Madam Chair, have we been asked to do something with the State Street?
No, but I know that there was, in the initial plans, there was talk about the type of developments, commercial developments could possibly land there, and at one point they were talking about a hotel, which that area is underserved for hotels.
And it's in our
Yeah.
boundaries.
Interesting. Any other questions? Okay. Keep us up to date. Let us know if there's anything that pops up.
We will. Thank you.
Thank you.
Clearwater?
Madam Chair, other board members, thanks for having us back. This is the first of the quarterly meetings that we plan to attend, so it's a little bit more truncated than we usually go over, but we're going to hit all the pertinent information related to the port, where you all stand. And you should have the presentation in front of you. I don't know how to. Oh, there we go. And for other people, that's a little hard to see, but I'm going to start with what's gone on the last calendar quarter and then move into portfolio positioning. But there's been quite a bit that's happened in terms of the market. And the first thing is the Fed finally started to cut rates. It was widely anticipated that they were going to start doing that. And through the back half of last year, they got through 100 basis points of cuts in total. However, what the way that the market reacts to that is not necessarily as intuitive as you usually think. And so since that point in time, yields have risen, particularly out the longer end of the curve, which we don't have a lot of exposure to. The policy, Ural policy goes out to 5 years, and we do have some exposure there. So in terms of the move over the quarter, that is painful, but the reinvestment that we get to do is at higher yields, and so it should move up the amount of income over a year's time frame that you do benefit from. This chart in particular shows how the market moved its expected Fed cut pricing over that quarter. So at 9:30 of 24, that's the blue bars, and each bar represents at different Fed meetings the cumulative number of 25 basis point cuts, so 0.25 percentage points. And you see it was pretty aggressive, peaking at around 8 25 basis point cuts, or 200 basis points in total. Over that time frame, because of a number of different factors, including strong economic data, but also anticipation of changes in policy from a red wave and a Trump win, that market pricing started to reverse. And so that's when you saw yields rise. You see that in a different way here, the yield curve, which is now upward sloping out beyond a year, it's been a while since we'd seen that. You saw pretty aggressive moves upward across the curve, and in the 2 and 5 year yields over that quarter, you saw about 60 and 80 basis points move upward respectively. So that's a pretty aggressive move over that time period. Some of that is inflationary concerns related to a universal tariff, which isn't necessarily going to happen, and there's a lot of moving parts within government, we all know, that are going to start to become more clear over time, and we could get adjustment. I don't like to overuse the term volatility, but there could be some volatility within the year, depending on what government decides to do. But then also on the other side of that, this year there's expected extension of the Trump 2017 tax cuts. He wanted to do more of that. That's obviously deficit increasing somewhere around $4 trillion over 10 years. Just on the baseline number for extending the tax cuts. If you do more, it's going to be more. And then there's also been some talk about offsetting that with revenue, but that's highly uncertain. We've heard a lot about DOGE and Elon Musk and Vivek, but that's not a formal department within the government that has a lot of authority to do things unilaterally, and so they have more of an advisory capacity. I'm sure there's plenty that they're going to try to do, but some of that will be challenged. And so we're going to see what that kind of bears out over time. Because of all of that, there is heightened uncertainty within the next year about which way yields could move. Overall, you do tend to see yields wanting to move down, the market wanting to view the Fed as more dovish, which you saw with the CPI print this last CPI print, where even though you had a tick up in headline inflation, on the core inflation, it came in under expectations just barely, and that was enough for the market to rally a little bit and yields fall. And so you see some of that kind of push-pull dynamic, and we have to be cognizant of that when we're kind of positioning the portfolio. Of course, the portfolio's main goal is to provide liquidity and meet the cash needs of the auditorium district, but it's also against a 0 to 3 year benchmark, and we can go out to 5 years. And so, that is meant to not hamstring us, but to guide us in terms of our positioning in the portfolio. And so we do want to be cognizant of that. On the screen, you can't see it very well, but this just shows the move over that quarter in the 2 and 5 year yields. And so you see most of that movement happen pre-election in anticipation of a red wave as that started to gain momentum. The white line is the 2 year yield, and that starts moving sideways just after the election. But the 5 year yield still started to move higher. And if you looked at longer maturities in the 10, 20, 30 year space, you'd probably see a similar kind of magnitude move. And that just is because that part of the curve is more impacted by factors related to economic growth and inflation, whereas the 2 year is much more hinged on what the Fed's doing. So, as I mentioned, we have some exposure in the 5 year space, in that 3 to 5 year space, which is impacted by some of that. And it's important to be cognizant of those differences in moves. Any questions on the truncated kind of market economic overview? I know a lot's been going on, if there's any interest. Yeah.
Last time when we saw the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, did it get offset by revenue?
No. No, no, and, you know, I think there's a couple of different factors here. Like, if you think about how the government scores these bills, CBO is the main scoring. The Joint Tax Committee also scores it, so they consider both of those. But you probably hear about static versus dynamic scoring, and so the kind of the official score for the bill is a static score, and that's where you hear the numbers. I think I just looked the other night; it was like 1.8 trillion for the initial Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. But conservatives like to refer to the dynamic scoring, and so they think there's going to be an impact on GDP growth that's going to offset over that time frame and even beyond a 10-year window. There's some rigidity in terms of how the government scores it, and so they didn't really flex last time, the fiscal hawks. This time, there's a lot more discussion about that, and I think it's because we're at around a 7% deficit in what I would call a peacetime, a non-recession, non-crisis time. And so you typically get much larger deficits in recessions and crises. We haven't come to that point yet since 2020 when it first started to really expand. But now we're at 7%. People are more concerned about it. And so fiscal hawks, including, you know, Mike Crapo is going to be chairman of the Finance Committee, which is the main committee overseeing these issues. You know, he's even talked about a desire to offset. And so I believe Republicans yesterday released a list of 50 different offsets that they could have. In the House, you have one vote margin, and so I don't know if any of those will come to fruition. I assume some of them will, but who knows what the ultimate kind of offsetting of a $4 trillion bill is. So it's going to be, that's where some of that volatility comes in. We're going to learn more as it goes, so.
Madam Chair, I'd point out that one of the potential offsets is eliminating tax-exempt bonds, so hopefully that won't happen. But
Well, Madam Chair, Clearwater, what do you see the overall market a year from now?
A year from now? Yeah, I mean, right now the market's pricing in about 50 basis points, roughly right around what the Fed's guided to.
Of cuts.
Of cuts, yeah, in the next year. You know, I think in terms of a weighted probability, I would skew towards right around 50 basis points. I don't think we have enough data right now to really
And what does that say for the overall market?
For the overall market? Yeah, so that's going to be mostly in that 2-year space. You see yields adjust lower. So you see a steepening of the curve. On the long end, it's going to be really dependent upon, it's hard to say. And, you know, for this portfolio, the 10, 20, 30, you know, it's not necessarily a concern. But I think a more painful scenario for the market overall would be a kind of a twist steeper where you have yields on the long end rising even as the Fed's cutting, because they're cutting into an accelerating economy, and that puts more pressure potentially on those longer yields. And so, you know, I think we're going to end up at lower shorter term yields overall, but there is a scenario in which you get stuck and you do see either stagnant or slightly higher yields from here, especially if we get really strong economic data and maybe they have to start reconsidering tinkering with yields a little higher. So there, I would say that's a smaller probability in terms of what we're thinking.
And then going from the overall market to the district, I assume the way you start in building our portfolio is you take our cash flow projections for a couple of year, 3-year period, and you match that with your duration and bond choices. If, for example, we pushed out 80% of our expenditures because we don't know if we'll ever spend them, how would you change the portfolio?
Yeah, so I think fundamentally, especially if we think back to when there was the aquatic center that we were specifically meeting a need for, we matched those cash flows, and so we had a much shorter overall duration for the portfolio. We were skewed much shorter. Since that time, in discussions with Cody and Stephanie, there hasn't been a need, but we kind of targeted a cluster of maturities in kind of that 1 to 3 year time frame, because that could kind of be when the next project would most naturally occur. And so that's why you see that cluster there. If there was certainty that it was going to be beyond that 3 year time frame at the elevated yields we have today, where we think it would be beneficial to take advantage of that, we could move out some of the maturities further and kind of start clustering in that 4 to 5 year space. Again, we would be cautious about getting too aggressive because put the potential for unexpected cash needs, maybe a project comes up that's faster than expected. There are other ways to fund that. Potentially you could get, if yields fall, you could have gains on securities and you could sell those and realize that gain. But overall, it's kind of a balancing act, and we would try to balance that issue. But yeah, you could marginally extend some of those maturities at
Wow.
elevated yields.
Between Julie, Stephanie, and Cody, I assume what I hear is we're spending like $3 million this year.
Capital, it's about 2.3 is what the budget's calling for, but
Yeah.
yeah, we've got debt service of 1.7, so it depends on how you skin the cat, yeah.
Right. Out of 30 million?
This is 26.
We have about
Yeah,
26 of it.
26.
You have in total about 30, yeah.
Yeah, 30.
It seems that we can go out farther.
Yes, and no. Yes, you probably can. And 5 years from now, we may realize, oh yeah, we could have gone far. The difficulty we have in making that decision or even recommending that is you don't get too much more reward for going further out. Brandon showed that chart. It is a positively sloped yield curve, but if you kind of zoom out, it's barely positive. It's a flat yield curve still. So we're getting 4.25% in the 3 year. We're getting 4.35% in a 5 year. You don't get that much more reward for going out. You could go out to the 10 year and get 4.45%. It's just really not that much higher for all that extra risk. If we were in a different yield scenario, maybe it was a really steep yield curve, and we could sit here and have this conversation, hey, here's your risk, here's all the extra reward you might get. And when that happens, we'll be sure to bring that up. Right now, we're in such a unique, difficult scenario. We've got a flat yield curve. We've got a new administration that is likely going to spend more than kind of ever before. And we already have high budget deficits, high debt balances, high debt to GDP ratios. If we were another country, we'd be being punished right now. Our yields would be rising. Your portfolio would be underwater. We'd be having some difficult times. We're not another country. We're the U.S. and we have the reserve currency. And so we're not going to face that problem, at least in the near term. But whenever you think about investing 5 years, 10 years, or 20 years out, you do have to start to think, okay, what is on the horizon in 5 and 10 and 20 years? Is there ever a scenario where our bonds are severely underwater because of some things we weren't so sure about? Now, would we maybe get some extra return for you doing that? Yes. But would it be worth the possibility of being severely underwater when you need it most? We don't think so. And that's why you have an investment policy in place that doesn't even really allow that. But if it ever looks really attractive, like as far as the numbers look, like we'll be sure to bring it up and talk about it.
And to that point, I actually wrote down looking at the policy if things change to that point. So yes, we want to make sure that we're keeping, or if we were to do another project, then maybe we shift into a different policy at that point in time. So,
Thank you.
Yeah, and overall, the portfolio, you see net income, kind of just a few things I would focus here is, as we're kind of talking about balancing within the confines of the policy, we're already slightly over duration versus the benchmark. And historically, because we reinvest maturities and this isn't a trading account, we're not actively trading, positions and shifting them, is that we reinvest those maturities, and generally speaking, we try to keep an overweight duration, let that roll down towards the benchmark and keep kind of maintaining that, and that does affect, you know, in the short term, performance when yields rise. But over time, you know, it kind of balances out. You know, and in terms of areas where we can work within the policy right now to find more yield, you know, I have an example down here where, again, we want to be cognizant of the duration exposure, but, you know, there's a AA rated Idaho muni that we can buy today for 20 over treasuries. And we have some maturities coming up, you know, and so kind of that's something that fits within. We can go, you know, we can get reasonable exposure. There's not always a lot of Idaho munis available, and so that's a challenge. Sometimes you get quite a bit of issuance like we have recently with St. Luke's and Boise State that are out in the market, but you know, this one is in the secondary, and we do look for those opportunities. It's just few and far between, and this is one where we can get that. So that's one example.
I'd also point out to the investment you guys made in the aquatic center is a good return right now on that, what you're getting, that 5% on that investment, so nice decision by the board there.
And that is the key kind of point, like, you guys will always make more money running your business than you will make from your investments. It is actually really nice right now, and it's been several years since we can say this, but like you earned about $1 million in income last year. You'll probably earn that and a little bit more this next fiscal. An additional $1 million to your bottom line is really nice to be able to count on. We'd like that to stay that situation as long as possible. We can't control where yields go, but at least for the near term, we do expect that type of income number to keep coming to you for quite a while.
$1 million in investment income.
Yes.
I'll take it.
And then,
great.
as I mentioned, kind of that tertiary goal, you know, beyond just the liquidity meeting the cash needs, is return. This is going to be, you know, it fluctuates over time, and really this is a focus of, you know, performance since over the last quarter, and you can ignore that year to date because it's for some reason pulling. It's the same as the quarter to date, but it's pulling more. I got to talk to analytics about that. But this is really just reflecting that aggressive move upward in yield with an overweight duration, and so, you know, that's going to move the other direction when yields eventually do start falling, and then you know, as I mentioned, since CPI came out, you kind of get the move in the other way, and that's just a direction of kind of that push-pull in the market, reacting to economic data and being more sensitive to it because the Fed's data dependent right now. And so, yeah, overall, kind of where we expect things. So,
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Any other questions?
anything else?
Thank you.
Thanks.
Julie?
All right. Thank you. Madam Chair, members of the board, excited to talk about some Boise Center operational updates. So just some highlights from December. We had our Festival of Trees, which we talked about. The top right picture is a gala table that was auctioned off. We had about 1,000-person plated meal. And then the bottom right picture is of the fashion show as well, Festival of Trees. About 800-person luncheon. We had over estimated 27,000 visitors throughout the week. And Shira, a huge shout out, was our event manager for this. Took this on for the first time and really made some good changes, not only for the event, for Boise Center. So it was a great success. Associated General Contractors, Lone Star, it was their 90th anniversary as a organization, and so they brought in the band Lone Star. So that was a big country group. We worked with Valiant on that, and also an 800-person plated meal, which is a big event. Our bar revenue, just want to highlight, in 3 days we had $71,000, which was was over half the amount we made that whole month in 3 days. So we had quite a lot of holiday parties, which showed obviously with the month-end revenue. I want to highlight Quality Electric is a new banquet we had about 500 people, but looking to triple in size. So we're excited to see where that event goes. Then at the bottom left, just a picture of McMillan did like a speakeasy. They worked with Linen and Loot, and so that was a great event. They also did, second slide, a kabuki drop. So I'll show a little video. It goes pretty quick, but it's essentially when you hide an element behind a drape and it quickly reveals an item. So we'll play it. So not sure if you heard it, but they're giving away 3 vehicles for their staff, Macmillan Company. So they hid 2 vehicles behind the drape. So it's cool enhancement that our in-house AV team was able to do, and the room looked beautiful, as you can see, with all the chandeliers. So it's a great event.
Show the cars very well, but it was a nice way to reveal the cars that were behind the drape. Now our staff's asking if I'm giving away cars.
Logistics, just a quick update. We have a new committee starting in 2025. Added a new community role, really just helping communicate our WOWgestions, which are essentially suggestions from anyone on the team that can, whether it's an event suggestion or a culture suggestion. So excited for this new committee. Anna's actually leading the charge on the WOWgestions committee, WOWgistics committee. So excited to continue to help with our our Boise Center events like staff party, Rake Up Boise, things like that. And as you can see, we have got a lot of suggestions, 45 submitted in 2024, so we completed 15 of them. I just mentioned a few, like we're doing a monthly birthday celebration for the staff who have their birthdays each month, and then coat hangers and family restrooms. So it's really neat to see people invested to be able to give feedback that help our guests and clients in the building. And then we're still working on 14 projects. And then Cliff led the charge on our Festival of Tree that we did for Festival of Trees. Smokey the Bear was his 80th anniversary, and so we did a Smokey the Bear tree and raised $750.
I just note also that we got 3rd place in the amateur category. So
Yeah, so it's a shout out. And then just highlight last 6 months where our team went. Venue Connect, which is the International Association of Venue Managers. Myself, Cody, Nick Shoba, and the sales team attended. Just was an awesome opportunity, especially for me. It was my first time attending to meet people that work in like facilities or bigger facilities across the U.S. and Canada. They also had a really good sales track, just continuing to be relevant and learn what other people are doing in the industry. National Facilities Management and Technology. This was a conference attended by David Grorio, our facility manager. So he was really able to see kind of AI, which is happening in the buildings, as well as some lighting. So he's going to be implementing some of the things he learned from that conference. Illuminate Momentous, which I know we've talked about quite a bit. And we'll be hosting. Puneet and Jennifer from our team were able to attend, and really just takeaways on the future of Momentous, as well as meeting other people to help us navigate that software. Then Live Design International and Digital Signage Experience. This was a conference in Vegas. It's really anything to do with AV and lighting, audiovisual. And so Casey, our Director of Technical Services, attended, really being able to take some ideas on digital signage, the spoke lighting, which we're still struggling with, so coming up with things to continue to help our AV team be the client of choice to go with. And then just to highlight for the next 6 months, we have just some IVM conferences, venue management school. So Alan Cushing, our operations manager, will be attending. He's in his 2nd year. He also got nominated as a leadership role, so excited to see Boise Center in that position. And then Matt Williams, our event manager, will also be attending for the 1st year. So it's a 2-year program. Again, just a way for us to keep networking and to meet people in the industry. And then our Venue Connect, the international conference, will be in New Orleans. And then the IAVM Region 4, which Cody's heavily involved with, will be in Vancouver. So it's really important to meet with neighboring states and provinces. And then department updates. So I'll be talking about my operations, technical services, which is ITAV, food and beverage, and then just some highlighting events upcoming for 2025. So SurveyMonkey, as we asked the client about all our services, so was able to provide what they gave us feedback on each department. So we have, again, our team did high 4s across the board. The 2 I really want to highlight was our overall cleanliness to get a 4.98. So our in-house AV and operations team continue to do a great job. And then the value of your event space, 4.75, which really isn't much lower than the others, but we have gotten comments about the carpet. So I think really investing in these capital projects is key to continue to keep that score high. And I think people are very excited about Boise Center West. And won't mention more about Petra, but that's on here. We have the event contract. We did update our future event contract, so what the client signs to have start time at 6 a.m. versus 4. So that's just going with the industry standard that when talking to other people in the industry, and then just allows us to have more regular schedules with clients. And then if there's need to switch times, we have an hourly rate to help with that and last minute changes.
I'll just jump in real quick and add.
Yeah.
What we noticed there is some staffing challenges where we were staffing at 4 a.m. because the contract, they said they'd show up. The client wouldn't show up till 8 a.m. that day. So we were paying for all that staffing. This will reduce some of that as well. So.
Yeah, thanks, Cody. And then utilities, we were able to hear back from like Idaho Power. We're looking at a 3.5% increase based on last year's schedule. So I'll look to report next to kind of hear from our gas, but was able to at least get a hold of Idaho Power for this presentation. And then for staffing updates, last time I talked about restructuring operations, and we've added some key layers with our assistant operations manager, Amy, and our senior ops, Sean, we've been able to add a lot of really good leadership on the floor. So our operations team's in a great position. We're at roughly around the same amount of people as last year with 56, about a 3% increase since last December. Then technical services, and getting the client feedback for 2024, 4s across the board. It's always great to see is quality of service and attitude. I mean, that's what hospitality is about. And so they did a great job. The lowest score across all 3 is the internet connection. So we've made a couple changes. One of the things we've done is hide the public Wi-Fi when there's a paid Wi-Fi, so that doesn't confuse the guests. They'll be using the wrong Wi-Fi, so that's helped. As well as we purchased new routers, so being able to quickly change the internet needs, bandwidth remotely and easier for our team. So we'll see. I believe this score will go up and for 2025. And then for technical service department updates, so we just finished an audio visual guide, so thanks to Mary Michael. It's a client-facing packet that's on our website, really advertising our in-house team and what we have the ability to do, so I'm excited to be sharing that with future events. KnowBe4, which is our phishing platform that we subscribed to this past year, we were able to decrease, essentially they send us fake emails and we hope to not get scammed. And we've decreased our score from 28 to 24. So we're just continue to help our team be aware of any cyber attacks that happen at Boise Center, that prevent from happening. Spicework tickets. So we had a record 33 closed out. So huge shout out to Pani and Ed. They're busy. It's been quite a busy couple months, especially with a lot of Microsoft updates and momentous changes. And so they continue to do a great job serving the team, and also we're both quarterly winners. So we have a really strong IT department. Staffing updates, we have hired a new audiovisual production manager, Amber Amaro, will be starting next week. She has experience working at Jump and Shakespeare Festival, so we're excited to have her on the team. And then we're at about 26 people as of December. This is a 15% increase since last December. So really, we've added some lead layers. You know, as Ryan over there is doing he's one of our part-time leads. So just getting some leadership on the floor during different more times of the day, and then being able to have more part-time on staff to help us for bigger events. All right, and then food and beverage. So again, I'll just repeat all high 4s, and then quality of service, just really proud of the team for just all departments just continue to have great attitude and service, and we really get a lot of comments about how our team continues to meet the client standard. Valuable and flexibility, this one's lowest, but not by much. This is always difficult with having recurring clients, but we're continuing to look at ways to be flexible with our menu, and as well being cautious of our non-compete. And then food and beverage, so Toast, which is our point of sale for our bars, has just been really helpful to be efficient. You can see this is actually a screenshot from my phone, so we're able to get live data. If a client or a guest needs a receipt afterwards, we're able to get it pretty quickly through finance. So I think it's been a really helpful tool for the team. And then we have a new menu for our holiday, and so that's something I'll have on a few slides more, but we're close to getting our menu done for our entire dinner, lunch buffet, and so looking forward to the completion of that. And then staffing updates, Steve Lively, one of our executive sous chef, will be retiring end of March. and he's been about 16 years at Boise Center. So we're doing a national search now, and he did offer to come help if we needed it. So we have a great culinary culture, and so that'll be key. But we have 120 people as of December of 2024. This is an increase, 8% increase from last December, and as I'm sure you saw, we've been quite a busy season. And then just a few highlights for 2025. American Water Works Association hasn't been here since 2016, looking at about over 1,050 room nights. Cellcore, which hasn't been here since 2023, we're forecasting over 279,000, and they're using more breakout rooms, so we anticipate that number even going up. Momentous, which we've talked about now that we're hosting, just a great opportunity for our team to be able to attend and take advantage of them being on site. Then Full Circle Health is a new banquet looking for over 1,000 people in attendance, so that'll be nice to have just another large event at Boise Center. And then just want to highlight a few of the capital projects within the last 6 months. The biggest one, which are the two pictures on the left, is our second floor refresh. So that was the concourse we've talked about, roughly around 16 offices and the boardroom. So I'm excited if you haven't seen already. New wallpaper, paint, carpet, trim, just keeping the same kind of design the room we're in now. And color palette, it's much brighter, and we've gotten a lot of positive feedback from our staff. And then just some other projects we've purchased. Front of house banquet shelving is just to help display our pastries for our banquets. So that was a great purchase for our pastries team. We purchased a few AV items, 4 moving lights, and some video switchers, and then a combi oven in the Boise Center East kitchen. All right, and then future projects, operations will be doing a 100 ballroom ceiling project in July. So really looking to add LED lights to the ballroom. 100 ballroom, as well as strengthening up the T-bars to help with some of the hanging. We hang a lot of items in 100, and so making sure we get more points and safety. And then looking at a new position of a maintenance supervisor to help facilitate some of these facility projects. An overview. Techno services, we have an AI co-pilot trial with some of our leadership, so just kind of seeing the efficiencies of AI, and that's with our Outlook, PowerPoint, Excel. So just kind of seeing if that's something that makes sense to use as a tool. Digital signage, we're still on-prem, so the signage outside the event spaces. So we're looking to get on the cloud, which will help us easily get things uploaded, but also more design options. So more to come on that. And then as I mentioned with food and beverage, we're updating the menu and pricing. So that should be the next couple months. We're actually looking at a bar lead to help with the setup and just leadership with how busy the bars have been. And then with events, we'll be reviewing the room rental prices. Will take place in July. Cliff has been leading the charge on the branding and sponsorship guide. So this has been something that will really help our clients know what to brand, whether that's windows, window clings, SSID, just things like that. So more to come. And then still looking at some on-site ordering options for our technical services and operations team. All right. Do you guys have any questions?
You mentioned issues with the spoke lighting. Can you get into that a little bit more?
Yeah, we're still having some power issues that we had replaced all the lights, and then they all just still aren't connecting. They aren't working, so we're still looking at fixing it. And it's also coming to end of life where they don't have some of that material left. So we're just kind of looking at another way of making that space light.
I know that was an expensive initial outlet.
Yeah.
I can't remember how much, but
Yeah, and we have extra lights that we're gonna, but if you look at it now, we're still haven't been able to replace some of the lights. So we're working with a local contractor to help see if there's a way we can at least get it running now and keep buying life with it, but they don't currently make those type of light fixtures anymore, from my understanding. But I can keep you posted. I know we're looking at maybe more of a projector, something else that doesn't have as much maintenance with it.
is that just was that like a newer product, or is it just they've phased it out?
Phased out. It wasn't really much of a newer product. It's just that type of technology has got a 3-year life usually for the most part, and then they create a new housing in the new. So.
Okay.
Okay. Is there anything else you'd like to see in the future from operations? I know I'm presenting on a 6-month basis.
Yeah, I plan on having her update biannually, so twice a year. So if there is other updates that you'd like to hear from the operations side or any other updates that you're not getting from that, I would just really highlight the one that I really am proud of just as from the whole team is when I show you guys the overall guest experience, and it looks like we do have all 5s at this point in the year. But our lowest score for any department is a 4.2 for all last year. That's incredible, knowing, and I've said this myself, how I fill out surveys. I tend to be only motivated to fill out a survey when I'm disappointed. So to see that, having no 1s or no 2s showing up on those reviews just speaks volumes about what our staff is able to do. Pricing is not something that we can't compete. So we can't be the cheapest. So to see some people aren't necessarily beating us up, yeah, that's the area where we get the lowest scores. But at the end of the day, I think it speaks volumes about what the quality of the services we provide from our staff. So.
All right.
Any other questions?
Just comment, I really like the presentation. I like pictures with only a few data points and points.
So more pictures. I like it. Thanks, Jody.
And it's interesting to know individuals, because, you know, we meet people a little bit in the halls and working and stuff, but to see who's being promoted and who's doing what is, I appreciate that.
Okay, great. I'll continue to share. So thank you.
Great, thanks. Brandon?
Madam Chair, members of the board, thanks for having me this afternoon to speak with you on some Safety and Security Department updates. To kick us off, I know you've all been waiting to see our loading dock barriers. So here they are in operation. It's really neat. It takes about 4 seconds to put them in the armed position and then another 4 seconds to de-arm. It was completed July 2024, so we were on pace with all of our capital project planning and the management of that project. It was impressive to see that loading dock get torn up and put back together in a short period of time with very little impact to our events too. So.
Just again, I just recognize the board's support for our projects for this type of stuff. You don't have to look much further than New Orleans recently from vehicle attacks and where these types of things. What this came from was a DHS, and if you're going to cover this, I apologize, but DHS recommendation about the potential ramping up ability coming up Grove Street into our ballroom. That door at the top of that ramp leads you right into the ballroom where we have 1,000 people meeting on certain nights. So appreciate everybody's support for this one.
And
So
we
do you leave that up in the arm position when you aren't loading actively?
So we do have a very specific way that we operate them, and that's based on certain conditions that we have inside the ballroom. I'd be happy to go into details just on the side and a side conversation just because they are security sensitive. But we do have some very clear guidance for our team, myself included, on when they are in the arm position. But generally speaking, they are down when we don't have anything going on in the building. Or we want the free passage to get trucks or vehicles or deliveries to get up to our loading dock or into the facility. So, yeah.
Madam Chair, Brandon, it's been a while, so can you refresh what the cost of this project?
Yes, I think all in total it came out to, I think, $240 some odd $1,000. So just shy of $250,000. Again, much appreciated for the board support. It was a big project that took a few years to
And there's
to get
different
put together.
rated barriers from the type of truck. These are some of the better barriers that you would stop a significant vehicle attack. And so there's ones that are below grade that are like this. The reason that these have such a high cost, the mechanics that go below grade when you have freezing, especially in Idaho, ice and snow, you need to have some components to that. So that makes it a little bit more expensive. But there are the above grade ones, they just don't give you the same level of rating.
Yeah, and I'd be happy to go into more detail. This specific product we went with because it only lives 11 inches in the ground, whereas the other ones are about 36 to 48 inches subgrade. So that would require pumps to remove water. This one it's a little less maintenance heavy because it can be gravity drains, or it can have gravity drains and not be maintained as diligently or have more fail points as the other systems that we see. So All right. Other parts as we explore other opportunities, and I know Cody can speak to it a little bit more. This is a very loading dock aesthetic as we look at security for other developments, other projects, other things that we get involved with. I would encourage looking into things such as CPTED. It's crime prevention through environmental design. There's a lot of architects out there in that field that are they focus on how can we make these security systems a little bit less security looking. So they use like crash grade planters, they have elevated walkways, stairs are considered CPTED security prevention design. I know Cody can speak a little bit more to it, and I am not an expert in CPTED. I have met a couple of people in the industry. I believe there are only 2 certified folks in the state of Idaho that can help provide.
It is a hot topic within IAVM, International Association of Venue Managers, as people are looking at designing new facilities rather than having to put bollards up or things that just don't look as welcoming, that they're really designing them either up a little higher to that point where the vehicle barriers are naturally just built into the perimeter through landscaping. So it looks intentional, but you're not going to get a vehicle attack into the building in the way that the building's designed. So as we look at potential future projects, I would just highly recommend we tend to lean into CPTED versus some of these hard barriers. And this kind of, it just doesn't give it that welcoming hospitality look. So CPTED's been a big topic within the association that I belong to.
All right. We will move on. The next point that I wanted to talk about is our 24/7 incident management software or system. This is a very busy picture. This is our dashboard. That's what we see from the administrator side of all of the different incidents that are happening every single day throughout our department, specifically to safety and security. What the system does, and we actually got it last February, it was active and running. It streamlines a lot of our reporting processes for many different incident types. So anytime we have to go in and enforce a policy or assess any damage around the building that a client or somebody has accidentally or intentionally done, we want to make sure that we document it and we have it in a consistent format that we can always reference back to, and our team knows kind of what are we looking for, the who's, what's, where's, when's, why's, and how's. We also do all of our security end of shift reports. So what did you do during the day? How were you busy? Who did you interact with? Were there any accidents? Were there any things that went on that maybe didn't substantiate a full separate report, but could be important for us to know for an event or something that might come up in the future. So our end of shift reports are also tracked in this software, which makes it, again, consistent.
I just add that some of the features that exist within this software are notifications.
Yep.
So I get sometimes a text message based on the level of the issue or the incident, and then myself or Julie can be notified so we don't come in the morning not knowing what happened overnight, if there was a security breach or some issue from that perspective. We had to exit a guest because of over-intoxication, whatever the issues may be,
Yep.
we get notified. And so it's just a much more streamlined process. When I go talk to Brandon, I already have a lot of the information that I need to kind of learn about what the incident was and how things were handled, so.
Yeah, the automatic notifications was also really nice. Previously, our process was very manual, very paper forward or Excel or Word spreadsheet focused. So this new system has made it a lot easier and a little bit more accessible for everybody to kind of know what's happening in the building, kind of at all hours of the day if they choose that. So it can get a little busy, but I'm sorry, Jody, but I did compile the data in a chart. The other feature of this, like Cody was speaking about, we can put reports together and we can actually make it into a prettier graphic. This is 2024 in review. Please keep in mind this is 2024 through December 31st. Kind of those bigger areas that probably draw your attention. We had 21 medical reports filled out for the last year, again, from February to the end of 2024. 8 of those required transport to seek further medical attention. So again, our previous reporting process would not provide us this information as easily as this one certainly does. We also do monthly reports that get sent out to Cody and Julie so they can see everything that's going on for the previous month. If there's anything that comes up that's more important, Cody probably got a separate email or text about, but he will see it in this report every month. All right, workers' compensation. So one thing that I do want to recognize is our experience modification for this current policy year. It is October 2024 through October 2025 is a 0.65. And that is, and I know I've spoken to most in this room, that's important because it's based on an average of 1.0. So for us, we're operating below what is average. And that in turn gets us a premium savings of just over $38,000 on our annual premium for workers' compensation insurance. So it is a pretty substantial figure. I know in speaking with our safety consultant, he is always surprised at how low it is considering the environment, the industry that we're in. It is impressive. It goes back to the safety initiatives, all the support that we get from the board for having those things in place and being on top of safety culture in this building. So it's very, very impressive. In addition, the incident reports, I guess I should make a distinction. These incident reports are specific to employee injuries. The 24/7 software, we do not track any employee injuries in. So the 21 medicals that we had last year was only related to guests. I guess that's a pretty important distinction to make. So, all right. Department notables. So last year, for fiscal year 23-24, my team had an internal utilization of Boise Center security staffing of 63%. My goal for this year is 60%. My goal is just to maintain where we are and continue to perfect and get on top of these processes as we continue throughout the year. That might change based on Cody's guidance and expectations, but my hope is with kind of the fluctuation of staffing and event needs, we can maintain that 60%. The other side of that is we outsource with external security providers that we have as approved vendors through our approved vendor list. So that's who's doing the other part of that percentage. We did get a really nice comment from one of our clients, and I know Anna received a phone call from this individual in December 2020. Yeah, one of our full-time security staff member, John Shaw, he got a very nice shout out from one of our attendees after he assisted him with a medical episode that he was having, and then even helped walk him over to his car in a parking structure nearby. Again, that's our team is customer service goal and mission, so it's always nice to see that recognition from our folks that we help. So not just a guy at the door, but we want to make sure we get you taken care of and have a smile on our face while we do it. All right. Looking ahead, over the last few months, we've been doing some FEMA trainings with the executive team and other folks that are serving on the Boise Center crisis team. They're very foundational courses, again, to help us get a little bit more prepared in our daily activities. But it also leads into our crisis communications plan and other preparedness activities that we're doing, like creating role-specific packets that outline roles, responsibilities, what are you doing in times of crisis or an incident that's going on, and it also includes some checklists for different positions and different things that you need to be doing if there is something going on, because for the most part, we're not handling crises every day. So these checklists really make it a very, very easy tool for us to use if there is a crisis going on in the building. It doesn't have to be necessarily muscle memory, but these are helpful tools to get us to that end goal of recovery. The other thing is we've been partnering with Idaho State Police Alcohol Beverage Control and Boise Police's Alcohol Compliance Officer on providing alcohol server awareness training inside the building to all of our staff, more specific to our alcohol service staff, but we do open it up for other departments and other members to participate. It is a free training, which is really exciting, and I've been very happy that Idaho State Police and Boise Police reached out to us to help host it and provide some space for folks in the valley. So, and I believe that's all I have. Are there any questions?
I'm assuming you do like live trainings.
We do, yes. Yeah, we do a couple different, for a lot of our staff, it's kind of seminars. We tell them, what does an incident look like? If we wanted to be more specific, what does a medical incident look like? How are we expected to respond in it? That training depends on who the audience is too. So if it's security staff, we're gonna be a little bit more hands-on, a little bit more involved. We do require all safety security staff to be CPR and first aid certified, so we have to know where first aid kits are, where trauma bags are located, where all of our AEDs are in the facility. And we actually walk, grab those items, and go and put it into practice, so.
Tabletop drills with each departments as well.
Yeah.
Bergen leads those, so going through scenarios, whether it's active shooter drills, those types of scenarios. Not the fun stuff, but the stuff that we need to go through.
Yep.
And then just really recognizing these are the types of things. I know I've got counterparts in Pasadena, California, and parts of California right now that are being used as facilities to house people. So there is always the chance that, again, I hope that's never our case, but it's why we participate in these things. Crisis communications plan take a lot of time and a lot of effort, but they are the ones that you don't ever want to not have when you need them ready to go on the shelf.
Yeah, and I have been working with City of Boise's emergency manager, Ada County Emergency Management, and I recently reached out to Idaho's Office of Emergency Management to start facilitating different exercises that would integrate responding entities. So, you know, Boise Fire, Ada County Paramedics, Boise Police, Ada County. So there's some things in the works that hopefully I can actually iron out and speak to you in the next meeting.
And then a couple components to the goal, the 60% usage, that is something that I like to see. It gives us the ability, and just you saw it in the comments there, security within the industry is an area where a lot of hospitality gets kind of missed, and opportunities for really actions to happen. Our ability to take as much of that in-house as possible, what's reasonable, intentionally goes to our culture and goes to that kind of hospitality. When you first person that you interact with is security in most venues, you have a chance to either give a sour taste in your mouth right out the gate or a positive. And I can't just thank our team enough from when they're welcoming guests. They're playing the security role, but they're also understanding that there's a hospitality component to what we do, and it comes through in the client side of things. So.
And I know the bollards came out of what, DHS report? And I'm assuming, has that been updated? Did you?
It's a 5-year report, and we're coming up.
It's a 5-year report. We redid it last year, and DHS has since 2018 split, and they now have the critical infrastructure and cyber side, so CISA, or Cyber Security and Infrastructure Security Agency. It's a mouthful. So CISA has a protective security advisor. They're the individuals that conduct the vulnerability assessments, or now infrastructure survey tools. We redid ours last year, and Idaho was in a transitionary period with our protective security advisor, who they've recently filled that position. So I've been knocking on his door regularly to actually get through that assessment and start figuring out where do we need to go and what do we need to be looking at in the future.
Those are free services provided by DHS, so we take full advantage of that opportunity as when they're available and they've got it staffed. So. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Great. Any other questions? Thanks. Appreciate it. All right, seeing no other business before the board, the meeting is adjourned.